105 years ago, a week from today, the very first Model T Ford rolled off the assembly line in Highland Park. An automobile for the masses, that's what Henry Ford called the Model T. That was launched in 1908. In 1908, a Model T cost almost $900. At the top of its peak in 1927, a Model T rolled off the assembly line every 24 seconds, and the cost was just $250. I will talk about the cloud assembly line, Azure and Azure Stack. A cloud for you. We all heard that. We've all been working with System Center enabled private clouds. We've been working with vCenter, vCloud. We've been working with perhaps with Azure, OpenStack. All those are private clouds. Azure Stack is not a private cloud. Azure Stack is an extension of Azure. But what does that mean, really? So if we think of the power grid, in our house or in our shops or in our businesses, we use extension cords to extend that power grid to where we need that power. Azure Stack extends the use of Azure to where we need it. It is basically quite hard to get an Azure Stack data center on an oil rig. It might not be a good idea to be depending on an internet connection if you're in a hospital. So Azure Stack meets those business requirements that Azure cannot meet. So think of Azure Stack as a premier service for Azure. It will not be cheaper. Some of the companies and businesses that initially jumped on the Azure Stack bandwagon was like, yeah, now we're going to compete with them. It will not be cheaper. It might be in parity with, but if you're in a hospital and you really need this, you're willing to pay a bit more to get that Azure functionality. I've been doing quite a lot of these Azure Stacks installs over there. I got some customers here that I work with, so if you're looking into, how many of you, by the way, have tried out Azure Stack? Okay, excellent. That's like half the room. How many of you have an integrated system, like a multi-node, a big rack? Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm preaching to the preacher, right? So for you that haven't tried out, so Azure or Azure Stack, I call it Azure. We've seen these pictures before. On top, we got an ARM, so the Azure Resource Manager. There's a lot of boxes in this one. We got regions, we got zones, we got scale units, data centers. The ones marked in green are the ones that currently builds up the Azure Stack. In a not too distant future, we might get some extra juice in our data centers. But this is what the Azure looks like. But those data centers, what do they contain of? First of all, we have a set of compute nodes. That's on-the-shelf servers using Windows Server 2016 plumbing with storage spaces direct, with software-defined networking and all that. On top of that, we have BMC, a BMC switch. We got some top-of-the-rack switches. And as you saw, when we get another scale unit, so we get some more power, we will have aggregation switches. And I will try to be as generic as possible in this talk. I work for one of the vendors, so some of the images in here might show up, but if you're aligned or prefer another flavor, just go talk to them and ask them how their stack is built and why and so on. And I would also, if I were you, talk to the other ones as well. So forgive me if there's some vendor stuff in there. But the good thing with Azure Stack, in the same way as in Azure, is that I don't have to think about those. The switches is not my problem. Well, basically it's my problem, but it's not, perhaps not yours. This is an appliance. This is a lockdown system. I had a customer that I talked to, and he was like, yeah, he had, let's just say that he had an interesting experience from another portfolio sale that we did in the past that was based on System Center. And he was a bit concerned that he didn't have access into the environment. It is an appliance, as I said, like in public Azure, we're not allowed into the data center. The good thing with this is we can hug the stuff in our data center, but we're not allowed to log on. What we need to think about is how we integrate this Azure data center into our environment. I only have 20 minutes now, so I cannot dig in really deep on all the things. But Thomas Rottinger has a session on Thursday, and he's gonna spill some beans on much more detail. I told you that we don't have access to Azure Stack. That's the truth with the modification. We got something called the privileged endpoints, or the PEP. That's an emergency console that we can get access to the information on and the infrastructure on the Azure Stack stamp. But these are the commandlets we get. We can like measure or get command. We can do get Azure Stack info. So if you when you install Azure Stack, an integrated system, you get a JSON file that's containing a lot of data in there on how you integrate this with your environment. You can get a new one in here. But that's pretty much what you can do. If you need to do something more, if you're in a challenge, and just trust me, this is not like a walk in the park to maintaining this. There's some work involved. But compared to that cloud for you, you might have 1 or 2 people managing it instead of a team of 40. So the process around that is something that's called breaking glass. So you generate a support token that you hand over to either your OEM support or Microsoft support, which on their end gives you another token, and then it unlocks this PEP. It's a virtual machine. Then you can install the commandlets that you need to go troubleshoot together with support to solve that possible challenge. Once that is done, the session is closed, everything is removed from this privileged endpoint. So this is your insight in. You will not be able to poke around without someone from either your OEM or Microsoft looking. One of the things that we found when we started it was launched a year ago. And my God, I got travel hours. One of the things is that we really need to read up. We need to go on to the Microsoft Docs, to documentations, and read up and prepare. Because if we do not prepare, the deployment will fail. No doubt about it, it will fail. So you have 2 options. Either you read up, you go to classes, there's Microsoft Learning has some certification classes, or you get someone that knows it and knows how to explain it to you. Those are the 2 options you have. You also need to think about, how will I use this? I was talking to the audience here, so We got people from the defense industry. We got people from retail. Everyone's got a different demand. So the defense, perhaps, they might want to do what's called a disconnected one. So they're in a red zone, they're like armored guards around, there's no communication to the rest of the world. And on the other side, we have a retailer that wants to develop good stuff for commercials, and like, yeah, on aisle 5 we have sales on shampoo. You have two ways also to do this. So the capacity model is that you license it up to the rim. So you pay for the full capacity of your Azure Stack install, or you go with the more common one, the pay as you use. You have two licensing models, the enterprise agreement or the cloud solution provider agreement, depending on how you are planning on utilizing or using your Azure Stack. And can someone please just give me a nudge when I have 5 minutes left, because I can talk like the whole day. Another failure in deployment is certificates. So this is a highly secured environment. Microsoft has deployed this with assumed breach in mind. That's why no one has access to this. We use certificates to ensure that we have a secure connection. If you don't have your PKI in order, the deployment will fail. You will not get your Azure Stack in. So, like the wizards that we're going to meet on Thursday, we need to keep track on our scrolls. And by the way, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to shout them out. Yeah? Yeah, so the question was that the disconnected one, is that forever, or do you, like you install it disconnected and then it stays there? Occasionally you need to go up to Azure just to make sure that you're still alive. Stay put afterwards. I can direct you to the guys in the Microsoft booth that you need to talk to. I also got questions that, yeah, I really want to learn how to install an Azure Stack integrated system. You will not. Your OEM will send their Azure Stack ninjas in. And you see what I did there? Like my son's Ninjago guy and the sword and stuff on my patio. They will send the team in and install this and integrate this into your data center. The process will look like something like this. So first of all, the OEM have internal discussions. It's like, yeah, hey, what did you promise them? Who should we talk to? Who are the stakeholders in this? And then the customer kickoff call starts, where everyone introduces themselves. There are some Q&A. And then there's working sessions where the Microsoft IP, the Microsoft deployment guides and the OEM deployment guides, the certificates, all the technical prerequisites are validated. Once that is done, the kit will be installed in your data center. Racked, stacked, plugged up to the power grid. Once that is done, and firmware is updated and all that, the Azure Stack deployment kicks off. Finally, there's a knowledge transfer where all the information, the keys to this Azure Stack is handed over to you. The last 3 boxes, that's about a week. So, this is the Dell stamp. What I want to talk about is the concept of the HLH. That's a hardware lifecycle host. This is a closed system. The only way to integrate into the stamp is using the HLH. You use that to deploy the Azure Stack. You use it to service it and update it. And it also resides if your vendor has the hardware monitoring tools on the HLH, I know there are some that have different solutions, but you need to talk to them. That also resides on the Azure Stack. Microsoft doesn't allow anything else on. We can't do our others. The vendors can't insert their other stuff. They're not allowed. Everything will communicate through the Tor switches. That HLH machine contains of three virtual machines in the Dell case. So that is the Open Manage Essentials, the Open Manage Network Manager, and that's sort of my mantra, I normally just call them Open Manage. And then we have the DVM machine. That's a digital deployment VM that is stood up during deployment that contains all the binaries for Azure Stack. And once the deployment is done, this is deleted. The domain admin account is deleted. If you were in some other sessions on covering the ASDK node, you use the Azure Stack admin account. That is just on an integrated system. It's only used during deployment. Then it's deleted. The only way to get domain admin is to using the PEP, the privileged endpoint. We got networking. We got internal storage network. We got infrastructure networks. We got the public VIPs, the private VIPs. One thing that I want to stress out on is the fact that the infrastructure network needs outbound internet access, either through a transparent proxy or through NAT. If this doesn't work, deployment will fail. When it comes to regions, so you remember in the slide where I showed the region, if you do a reel along, this is my awesome Azure Stack that I purchased when I was at it. You're going to get this URL when you do, because everything else will be, I think they recorded, and yeah, I saved myself there before I said the S word. The difference between public Azure and Azure Stack is this. This is the operator portal. This is where the Azure Stack cloud operator maintains and builds out the offers to the customer. So this is where you build whatever you want to present to the consumers of your Azure Stack. Azure Stack comes in two ways. I talked about the integrated system, and I mentioned the ASDK node. So that's the Azure Stack Development Kit. These facts, you can find them online. The slides will be available afterwards also. But the minimum one, that's just going into a car shop and just look at the car. You take it for a spin, but you can't, there's no kids in the background spilling ice cream. The recommended one, that's the minimum that you want. So you have two options for the ASDK node. Either you see your OEM of choice, or you go down the basement and look for something that meets the specs. And then go far and beyond. You need the fastest disk you can find. You need as much RAM as you want, because you want the experience to justify to the solution. I told you there was two. Well, it's actually three, because my good friend Ned here had a session yesterday, because you can actually run Microsoft Azure Stack on Microsoft Azure, which is Azure on Azure. It's like tunnel vision there. But you can. The integrated system from Dell comes in chunks of 4. So it's 4 812 nodes that resides in your data center. Yesterday, we had a blog post, so it's announced now we can have 16 nodes. The vendors also have, most of them have an all-flash array, which provides much more performance, of course, but flash consumes less energy, less heat. So, an Azure Stack in a tank, that would be really cool. Or in the trunk of your car, like you build a lab there. We see in this picture as well, we have 54 regions of Azure. We have 92 regions or countries with Azure Stack. That covers kind of a lot. So, we got Azure for the global masses. This is the cloud assembly line. My name is Frederick, and I work for Dell. Questions?